Friends, it's Terri Gaines, independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up. In this video tutorial, I'm going to share a fun fold card created with the Shepherd's Care stamp set. The stamp set can be found in Stampin' Up September through December 2024 mini catalog. It is absolutely beautiful. It's got some beautiful images, some great sentiments. I'm going to give you tips on using this. In this tutorial, I'm also going to show you how I turn this Winter Meadows Designer Series paper into a specialty paper using the metallic enamel effects. And I'm going to have lots of tips on creating the fun fold, plus showing how you can create all the things I'm using for the fun fold and create a standard card. Plus I have lots of samples to share after the tutorial. The first thing I want to do is stamp this image. I absolutely love all the artwork that's in this stamp, and I'm going to give you tips on the best results to stamp with any stamp, but especially one that has all this detail. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm picking my color by the Designer Series paper. I'm going to be using, for this sample, I'm using this Designer Series paper, and when I'm done, I'm going to show you this paper created with Night of Navy, but for this sample, I'm going to use Blueberry Bushel. I love the fact that Stampin' Up's ink pad colors coordinate with their Designer Series paper and their cardstock and many of their products. So I don't use this ink pad very often, and it's well inked. They come that way. So when I stamp with a detailed stamp like this, I just want my ink on the surface. I don't want it in the crevices. So I'm going to make sure that I don't have a lot of ink on the surface of this ink pad by taking this plastic spoon and the curved side of the spoon, and I'm just going to move all the ink that's right there on the surface over to the edge. It'll eventually settle right back to where it is, but I just want ink on that very surface of this stamp, and I'm tapping it, but I'm really just making contact with the ink pad. I am not pushing down. I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but my goal is to get ink just on the surface, not in the crevices. Then I'm going to stamp on my cardstock. I'm going to press evenly, not real hard, just even pressure. But my goal here is make contact, even pressure, and allow the ink to absorb into the cardstock. You want to make sure you don't push too hard because you're going to distort that image, and you're going to give it enough time for the ink to absorb into the cardstock. So now you see all that detail that's in that artwork is now on your cardstock. So it's perfect. Now I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to set this stamp out of the way. I'm going to close this for the time being, and I'm going to cut this out. Now for my measurements that I have for this card, I'm calling this a decorative layer, and it's actually the decorative layer 2. And I have that as 2.5 by 4 inches, and I'm going to be using some dies to make it more decorative. You can cut it into a rectangle, but the third largest die is approximately that size, and I'm going to cut this image out with that die. So what I'm going to do is bring in my cut and emboss machine, and I'm going to take platform 1, platform 2, and it's got the visual when you cut with dies. You also take 2 of the plate 3, so I'm going to put that down. I'm going to take and put my cardstock down. Then I'm going to put the die down on that. Now I'm going to make sure these are all squared up here. I'm going to place this down where I want it, and then I'm going to take a Post-it note. I found these transparent sticky notes. They're like a Post-it note, and you can see through them. I usually just cut part of one, tear it, and then I can hold my die into place. So I'm going to just place that here, put the last plate on the top, and now I'm going to bring in my die cut machine, my cut and emboss machine, and I'll bring that into the picture here so it's under the camera. Place this all through here, run that through, and then that's going to cut out my image. So here we have that cut out. And this still has some stickiness on it, so I'm just gonna put it on my cut and emboss machine, and then I can continue to use that sticky note until it has no adhesive. So I'm gonna set this out of the way, and we're going to still use this. So I mentioned this is my decorative layer 2. I do have note here that on a scrap piece of cardstock for the star. So we have the star here, and I'm going to just use the ink pad as it is. I'm tapping that, and I'm going to stamp this just on the corner here and get a good image there. I'm going to clean my stamps when I'm all done with the video. I won't take the time to do that. And I'm going to cut this star out for our project. Well, fussy cutting is not my cup of tea, but I am going to just show you how I cut the star out is I take my blade and I follow the edges of the star. I don't worry about the point, cutting that off, until I get all of these pieces cut. So let's just do a couple of these. I won't take the time to do that, but I just cut around like so. And I actually have that done ahead of time. So that's what I have. And if I have any excess here on the ends, I cut that. Now for me, the star, I see these all being the same length. I'm going to shorten the 2 on the side. So I'm just going to take over here, and I shorten it probably shorter than I wanted it to be, but that's okay. I'll just try to make the other side as consistent to that length as I can. And we're going to say that's okay. So I'm going to use that as the star for this project. So now we have that done. Now I'm going to work my way up here. So I have a sentiment label. I did that work ahead of time. I stamped that sentiment, and look at it. It looks like I got some ink on there. That's okay. We'll let it go. And then I have that. We have this, we have the star, we have this. Then the decorative layer number 1, I already have that cut. It's the 3 by 4.5 countryside corner. We're going to adhere these 2 together for this card. So I'm going to take my Stampin' Seal and put some adhesive on the back of that. I'm going to look for equal spacing on all sides of this, all edges, and place this down like so. So now we have that. So now we have Designer Series paper layers. So I have used this Winter Meadows paper. I already mentioned I'm using this color. That's page. That's why I chose the Blueberry Bushel color. One of them is 3.5 by 5 1/4. The other one is 1 3/8 by 5 1/4. And I already texturized this. What I did was I put that paper in the painted, this is called the painted texture folder. I placed it in here, put it in my cut and emboss machine. For a 3D platform or a 3D folder, you use platform 1, you place this down, and then you use plate number 4, run that through, and it texturizes your Designer Series paper. You may not be able to see that in the camera right now. Now this folder is an online exclusive, so you can still get that. And then I also texturize this paper. What I'm going to do for this paper is turn it into a specialty paper. And what I'm going to do is use this metallic enamel effects. Now I have a couple videos I've already done. I'm going to just bring those cards in. I used gold for this tree, for this fun fold card. In the text portion of this video, I'll link you to this card. I also used all of those products for this card, and I added the gold to this tree. So I have a tutorial that will show you how I did that. This time I'm going to use the copper. When you purchase this, you get gold, silver, and copper. And I have samples I'm going to share with you of all 3 of the colors. So how I use this is I take and I place it on my silicone craft mat, and I just take a little bit of it. You also want something to clean this up. I found that alcohol wipes work the best to clean this up. That's my experience. So what I'm going to do is have those handy, and I'm going to take a clear block. I'm going to have my paper on my silicone craft mat. I've got my enamel effects there. I'm going to take the clear block. I'm going to squish this and I put it on the clear block. Then I'm going to take the clear block and transfer the enamel to my designer series paper, and I've just created a specialty designer series paper. Now each time you do this, you're going to have a different, well, let me rephrase that. Each time I do it, I get a different effect from this, and sometimes it depends on how you're holding the clear block. So what I really want to try to do is get the ink on here and hold it flat to the surface, and when you rotate it and go across your paper, the clear block is solid. It's only going to make contact with whatever images are the highest. And you don't need a lot of the effects on your paper to get the results that turn out beautiful. And I did much better for this one. I held it flat much better. You can see I got a little bit up there, but that's okay. That just adds a great texture to your project. Now this is metallic. It's going to dry really quickly. So I'm going to set this aside. I'll just set it right here for now. I'm going to move this out of the picture and move it over here because we're going to look at dimensions in a short time. And you can see on this one, I have more surface here. That's totally okay. I'm good with all of that. It just adds a character to your projects. Now the alcohol wipes are to clean this up. So I already have used one already. I try to get the best use out of my alcohol wipes. So I use them if they still have some good spots on them and they're not dried up. I put them back in the container and just grab it until it doesn't have any moisture left on it. So now we have this all cleaned up. And then I just put it back in here and I can keep using that one. I just keep those in my craft room. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to add that to the star. That's okay. We've got this nice and clean. We'll do this all over. Now, I wanted to add the star as a decorative element to my card, and I wanted it to be metallic. So what I did was I took the crystal effects and did the very same thing. I have the star already cut out. I'm going to take my metallic, get it on the clear block. Now this is not texturized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just attempt to get this metallic on here. It doesn't cover it like really thick. You could maybe squeeze it on there. I think that would be more messy doing it that way. But what I do here is just get some color on there just to add some metallic design to it. So I also want to do that. Now I mentioned this does not take long to dry. Now I like to clean it up before it dries. If you wait till it dries, you can clean it up, but you just have to use a bit more elbow grease to get it all cleaned up. So I'm going to keep this on the silicone craft mat for now. And we will just move that out of the way here. So we've got that part done. We're done with the dies. We're done with this. I'm just going to move this over. These are probably already dry, but we'll just give them more time. We have this. Now what we're going to do is we're up to the card base. Our card base is 8.5 by 5.5. Now, if you don't want to make a fun fold, you could cut this designer series paper to be 4 by 5.25 and just fold your cardstock in half. I'm going to show you some samples done that way, but I want to do a fun fold. So I'm going to bring my Simply Scoring tool into the picture, And you can use your paper cutter with a trimmer. I like to use the Simply Scoring tool. I have it handy here. And I'm going to score this cardstock at 4 1/4, at 5 7/8, at 6 3/8, and at 8 inches. And then what I'm going to do is take my bone folder and fold that first one to fold the card in half. Then I'm going to fold all the rest of these score lines to be mountain folds. And let me score them in a moment, then I'll show you how they will look. So once I fold that, they're all mountain folds, and they're going to create this pillar or like this panel. So what we want to do is put adhesive right here. I like to use Terri tape. Terri tape is Stampin' Up! Strongest adhesive. It comes in a roll like this. It has a backing on it, and the reason it has this name is you can tear it. You can just tear it, or you can cut it with your paper snips. So when you use it, do apply it, put pressure down on it. The best way to get the backing off is to apply pressure, and friction helps get that backing off. But before I take the backing off, I want to show you how I want to adhere this. I'm going to make that pillar or that wall, and what I'm going to do is fold this with the adhesive on the bottom side. I'm going to fold on the second score line. So I'm going to skip the first one, go to the second one, and fold that. When I fold that, that edge goes right to that fold right there. That's exactly where I want it to be. I'm going to take the backing off, and then I'm going to close this on top of that adhesive. Now what happens, it buckles like that majority of the time. What I do is I let it buckle like that, and then I just take my bone folder and I straighten it so it lays flat. Now that wall will come up, and it will be our fun fold. So the first thing I want to do for this is to put that designer series paper on this piece here. And I'm just going to see if it's dry yet. It is already dry. See that? I don't know how long that was, but that wasn't very long. So now we have our specialty paper. I'm going to put adhesive on the back of this. And then I'm going to look at these 3 corners for equal spacing. And it's about 1/8 of an inch of spacing. And place that. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is take this inside sentiment. Well, first of all, what I'll do is I'll put this piece on. So now you have to decide, depending on how your metallic looks, I'm going to put it on like that. I'll keep it just like that. Each time you do this, it's going to turn out different because it does depend on what part of that embossing folder that you place your paper on is going to depend on what type of raised textured images you get, and then how much ink you have on that clear block. But I just love how you can turn your paper into a specialty paper. Now the next thing I'm going to do is put the sentiment in. Now if my sentiment was smaller, I could have picked a smaller one of these dies, but I wanted to use the sentiment that was in the stamp set, and it works out just fine to use this one. But I'm going to put this image really close to this edge of the card. I'm going to look for equal spacing on the top and on the bottom and adhere that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this on the top of the, it's going to be on the outside of the card, but it's only adhered to this little panel, this small wall right here. And what I'm going to do is use dimensionals to attach that. So how I'm going to know where to put the dimensionals is this white piece and this white piece are the very same size. So this white piece is going to be my guide. I'm going to place these dimensionals so they're within this border. So they're not higher than that white cardstock, and they're not lower than that cardstock. And that's going to be the guide for my end dimensionals. I like to put 5 on. I put 1 in the middle, then fill those gaps in. It might be overkill. You could also use Terri tape to put this on, or if you choose your regular adhesive. And take the backings off. Now what I can do is take this. My goal now is just to cover this up, but I really want my white I don't want it to be higher than this piece. I want them equal going across or level. So I'm going to kind of take an eye on where I have that. I have equal spacing on the top and bottom. So as long as I go equal spacing on the top and bottom of this, decide how much I want to have on space on the right and left, and place that down. Now for this star, what I want to do is you can attach it with a mini glue dot. You can attach it with a cut dimensional. I do have a part of a sheet of mini glue dots here. I'm going to just take a mini glue dot. I cut my sheet in half, and then I'm going to place that on here, take the backing off, and then I'm going to place this star right here. It kind of gets lost into that background paper, but you can kind of see it there. And another option, I'm going to show you another option. I didn't push this down very far, so let's try another option. It does get lost in that. I thought maybe with the more metallic on it, it wouldn't get lost, but it got lost too much. Let's put it a different location. Let's use a mini glue dot instead of the dimensional. And so I'm going to take my mini glue dot, put that on the back, and then we're going to, this is where my other samples are. So I was going to try something different on this sample, and I don't want exposed adhesive, and I see a little bit of that mini glue dot right there. Now my videos are unedited, so I'm not going to edit out all of these little bloopers that are happening, but you know what? That's what happens. Sometimes things don't go quite as we planned. I'm going to put the star there instead. So that's how this fun fold is. So it goes flat for your envelope, and then it opens up to reveal the inside sentiment. As I mentioned, if you don't want to do the fun fold, but you like the papers, you like everything else, I'm going to show you some other samples. So I did the very same card, and I did some stamping over here on this one. I used Night of Navy, and then I did the I did gold on that star, but this is Night of Navy instead of the blueberry bushel. Now here's the sample. If you don't want to use a fun fold, you could do this card idea just with a regular card and embellish it up as much as you would like. That designer series paper has another print that's got more of the Misty Moonlight colors in. So I use Misty Moonlight, and this time I use the silver. So I don't know if it shows up on the camera, but I have the silver for the metallic. So here's the fun fold card, and here's the standard card. I also use this print, and I use the silver color. I use the basic gray colors here. I use the smoky slate color for this sample, and then I just stamped on the inside. So these are so fun to create, and here's one with this is Pretty Peacock and Lost Lagoon, and I've stamped, and I used the gold on that star, and then here's just a regular card. So as I mentioned, if you don't want to do a fun fold card, you can do a standard card. I hope you enjoyed this technique using the metallic enameled effects to create your own specialty designer series paper. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. If you're interested in duplicating this card or making a card similar, I do have a PDF that you can download that will have the measurements. It will have the photos of the card that I created during this tutorial, and it will have a link to this video so you can rewatch the video and create your cards. As I mentioned, please reach out to me if you have any questions. I would love to have you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for stopping by. Take care and happy creating.